Namaste and greetings of the day. The Republic of India welcomes participants from BRICS countries to the second day of the two-day summit on green hydrogen initiatives organized by NTPC on 22nd and 23rd of June 2021. Honorable heads of BRICS delegations, Director Ministry of Power, Government of India, Mr. Suman Chatterjee, Chairman and Managing Director NTPC Limited, Shri Gurdeep Singh, senior power professionals from Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, senior officials from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Ministry of Power, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Union Territory of Ladakh, guest speakers who have joined us from Deloitte, Executive Director, Renewable Energy NTPC, Mr. Mohit Bhargav, and colleagues and guests who have joined us today over MS Teams and through YouTube for the live relay. It is indeed an honor for NTPC in collaboration with the Ministry of Power to host BRICS delegates in the summit, which on the first day, yesterday, entailed powerful presentations on the topic by each of the country delegates and is now moving ahead with panel discussions on the green hydrogen initiatives today on the second day. NTPC Limited, under the aegis of Ministry of Power, is India's largest power generation utility with an installed capacity of 66 gigawatts and is one of the top 10 global energy giants. We have presence in the entire value chain of the power generation business and are committed to partner in the global energy transition. In the course of two-day summit, we have been emphasizing on how green hydrogen can be a game changer in global efforts to decarbonize our economies, and how internationally strong government cooperation backed by financial support, regulation, clear strategies, sharing of good practices, and cross-border infrastructure can cement the solidarity towards green hydrogen. It is heartening to note that yesterday's summit was joined by a whopping 958 attendees in total on MS Teams alone, and over 1,000 views on YouTube. It is very, very encouraging, and we are grateful to everyone who has been a part of the event. May I now invite Mr. Mohit Bhargav, NTPC Limited, to open the second day of the summit and address the August gathering. Mr. Bhargav heads the renewable energy vertical of NTPC Limited as Executive Director. He is guiding to make RE portfolio of NTPC of size 60 plus gigawatts in the next 12 years and spearheading the hydrogen economy initiatives from NTPC. Sir.
Thank you, Kenna. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you. So very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the honorable delegates from BRICS nations, spanning from one end of the globe to the other. It's really an honor for me to start the proceedings on day 2 of the BRICS Summit on green hydrogen initiatives. The words like climate change, greenhouse gas effects entered into our lexicon in the late 20th century, even though the Industrial Revolution started in the 18th century. The first targeted effort to reduce the greenhouse gas emission was made with the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. The latest addition to our vocabulary is net zero emissions. So it's a journey we are all becoming part of, and it is becoming imperative and widely accepted that globally the greenhouse gas emissions need to be contained so as to limit the temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius. It is also quite obvious that increase in emissions in any part of the world would affect everyone across the globe. Therefore, a major transformation and redesign of the global energy system is expected towards achieving the targets which were set out during the Paris Accord. We all need to pitch in to ensure that we are able to stick to the pathways. And in this regard, India has already moved forward in terms of achieving its commitments given under the NDCs and is quite likely to exceed the same. One of the main targets of India's NDC was to achieve 40% of installed capacity from non-fossil fuel by 2030. Towards this end, India has embarked on a journey to have 450 gigawatts of renewable capacity by 2030. As on date, we already stand at over 95 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity. Let's talk a bit about hydrogen now. Hydrogen and energy have a long shared history, powering the first internal combustion engine over 100 years ago to becoming an integral part of the modern refining industry. Hydrogen has potential to support the energy transition, and particularly green hydrogen has the potential to do that while addressing multiple energy challenges, thus facilitating the integration of renewables and decarbonization of energy production to energy transportation in a zero carbon energy economy to electrification of the end users. Two key developments have contributed to the growth of hydrogen in recent years: rapid reduction in cost of renewables, creating the potential of reducing green hydrogen costs, and increase in urgency of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. As we all know, hydrogen can be extracted from fossil fuel and biomass, from water, or a mix of both. Natural gas currently remains the preferred source of hydrogen production. Green hydrogen is produced from renewable energy. It is that hydrogen which is produced from renewable energy by electrolysis that splits water molecules into their constituent elements, hydrogen and oxygen. Today, green hydrogen is expensive than other hydrogen, which are referred to as grey hydrogen or blue hydrogen. The production cost of green hydrogen is determined in a major way by the renewable electricity price, the investment cost of the electrolyzer, and its operating hours. With advances on electrolysis technology and the falling cost of renewable energy, the cost economics for hydrogen have been altered and created a significant opportunity to boost economic growth and move away from fossil fuels. The total demand for green hydrogen could reach as much as 530 million tons by 2050, displacing roughly 10.4 billion barrels of oil equivalent in various sectors such as heating, transportation, power generation, chemicals, and steel manufacturing. And in this, I'm actually not counting other hard-to-abate sectors like aviation fuel and marine fuel. As hydrogen produced with renewable electricity starts competing on costs with fossil fuel alternatives, we shall get further traction and have fast adoption by various use case industries. Globally, strong government commitment backed by financial support, regulation, and clear strategy and targets has triggered the momentum in the hydrogen industry. BRICS governments can level the playing field in areas such as setting national targets, tapping potential local investment opportunities, removing barriers that may exist to invest in the hydrogen economy today, invest in the deployment of new infrastructure, and incentivizing through tax breaks or subsidies to encourage the initial acceleration of hydrogen. International cooperation is vital to accelerate the growth of versatile clean hydrogen around the world. If governments can work together to scale up hydrogen in a coordinated way, it can help to spur investments in factories and infrastructure that will bring down costs and enable the sharing of knowledge and best practices. We all share a common vision of sustainable development and inclusive growth. Hydrogen could be that element that helps us all achieve that vision. Enhanced international cooperation is needed across the board, but especially on standards, sharing of good practices, and cross-border infrastructure. This is precisely the reason why this August gathering is arranged, comprising of eminent representatives from BRICS countries. In the recent announcement made by the Government of India in February 2021, one of the major initiatives announced for the clean energy sector was the launch. As India is gearing up to deploy 175 gigawatts of renewables by 2022 and 450 gigawatts by 2030, hydrogen is set to be an essential integrator, harnessing excess power generation, balancing intermittent supply and demand, and ultimately helping support a clean, efficient, and sustainable energy system. Yesterday, during address, Secretary Power Mr. Alok Kumar said that hydrogen presents a good technology option for BRICS countries individually and collectively to address climate challenges and benefit from its opportunities. Mr. Gurdeep Singh, CMD NTPC, mentioned yesterday that transition to a hydrogen economy will not only reduce our GHG emissions and provide clean air, it should also reduce India's dependence on imported hydrocarbons. Yesterday's sessions were quite successful, and we could see that hydrogen is part of the energy policy in all the BRICS nations. Green hydrogen was also discussed as the ultimate means to end the GHG emissions, while blue hydrogen could be an intermediary step along the way. All BRICS countries have taken steps in their capacity to foster the hydrogen economy. Today, on the second day of the summit, we shall have two panel discussions. The first would be prioritizing green hydrogen applications in countries' energy policy framework, with learnings from various business cases and pilot projects across the globe. We shall learn more about the prioritization done by the member BRICS countries, and I'm quite hopeful and quite looking forward to these discussions. As far as NTPC is concerned, we are focused completely on green hydrogen and are taking up pilot projects in the area of hydrogen-based mobility, green methanol production using green hydrogen and carbon capture, blending of hydrogen with natural gas, green ammonia, and hydrogen-based microgrids. The second panel discussion would tackle the subject of financing options and institutional support for driving investments in green hydrogen, and shall be moderated by my good friend, Mr. Subhranshu Patnaik, who is the senior partner at Deloitte. I'd now like to hand it back to Kena for starting session 1 and introducing the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you for doing the honors, sir. For recapitulation of yesterday's event as well as setting the context for today's summit of the Green Hydrogen Initiative. Well, we now move forward to the panel discussions for today, but before that, let me take the opportunity to introduce the eminent panelists on board today. I also request the panelists one by one, if it is feasible, to kindly put on your camera and greet the house as I introduce you. From Brazil, may I invite Mr. Giovanni Vittoria Machado. Mr. Machado is the Director of Economic, Energy and Environmental Studies at Empresa de Pesquisa Energética. He's a Bachelor in Economics from Fluminense Federal University. He has done Masters and Doctorate in Energy Planning from Universidade Federal de Rio de Janeiro. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name incorrectly. Please excuse me if I am doing that. He has expertise in geopolitics and oil and gas prices, natural gas infrastructure planning, energy modeling, demand and supply, projection, and energy sector planning. He has worked at various institutions in the energy sector, such as Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory as a visiting researcher, the National Agency for Petroleum, Natural Gas, and Biofuels as a coordinator of strategic studies, the COPPE UFRJ Energy Planning Program as a visiting professor, and he's also an MBA in Energy Business from Fundeca Getulio Vegas as professor and coordinator. He has also collaborated with the International Atomic Energy Agency as an expert on sustainable energy development and energy modeling. Yes, sir. Would you like to greet the house, sir?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Should I already share my presentation and start, or just having some few words?
So just share if you could share a few words right now, and we'll go with the presentation when the panel discussion begins.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting EPE for having this talk here today. It's a very important issue. Hydrogen will help in faster energy transition, mainly on those hard to abate sectors. So it's really a pleasure to be here, and I also would like to congratulate to my colleagues in the panel.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, means a lot. From Russia, we have Mr. Moskvin Anton joining us. Mr. Moskvin is the Vice President, Marketing and Business Development in Rostom Overseas Russia, with over a decade of rich experience in the Russian nuclear energy industry. He led the international business development and is actively contributing towards promoting the Russian civil nuclear technologies abroad. He's also involved in global energy landscape monitoring, assessment, and strategy elaboration. He holds a degree in international relations from National Research Nuclear University. He contributed significantly in the International Conference on Climate Change in Vienna, describing the role of hydrogen technologies in the global energy system. From India, we have Mr. Vivek Kumar Devandan joining us. Mr. Devandan is an Indian Administrative Service Officer presently in charge as Additional Secretary, Ministry of Power, Government of India. He is a graduate in electronics and holds a postgraduate in optoelectronics and optical communication from IIT Delhi. During his illustrious career of 25 years as an IAS officer, he has held various administrative posts in the areas of finance, power, energy, commerce and industries, education, human resource development, economic affairs, and district administration. From China, we'll have Ms. Fu Tianyi joining us. She's the member of National Energy Administration of China. She's an expert from Research Institute of China with a rich experience in electric power planning and engineering. From South Africa, we have Mr. Barry Bredenkamp, Senior Manager at the South African National Energy Development Institute. Hello, sir. Mr. Barry has worked in important areas like demand-side management, energy efficiency program in ESCOM. He has expertise in renewable energy in a developing country context and was instrumental in implementing the highly successful GEF ELI program in South Africa. He is the past president of the South African Sustainable Energy Society of Southern Africa, chairman of the Public Relations Committee of the Illumination Engineering Society of South Africa. In the second panel today, we'll have Mr. Andre Beida, Vice President, Head ESG Finance, joining us. He has served as the head of the National Green Finance Task Force and has done many notable works in the space of green financing and ESG. The moderator for the second panel shall be Mr. Shubhranshu Putnayak, Senior Partner from Deloitte. He has over 2 decades of experience in the power and clean energy field. He has wide experience in strategy, restructuring, capacity building, public-private partnerships, project finance, and regulations. He has also led various critical assignments advising the government in the power sector. Well, at this moment, let us all take a short pause for a group picture, if that is possible. May I request all the delegates to kindly put on the cameras for a while so that we can take a good group picture for our keepsake. It'll be great to have all the senior delegates, all the speakers on the same screen for a picture.
I don't see the others, I think. No?
All the esteemed guests who are here, if you could kindly put on the camera. Okay, so at the count of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much. Thank you for the honor, sir. Thank you very, very much. It really means a lot to us. So let us move ahead to the first panel discussion of the day, and the topic has already been told to you: prioritizing clean hydrogen applications in countries' energy policy framework, with learnings from various business cases and pilot projects across the globe. During the discussion, if any of the panelists wants to share a presentation, you're very welcome. Brazil, we know for sure, shall be sharing theirs. And with this, I invite the moderator for the session, Mr. Mohit Bhargav, Executive Director, Renewable Energy NTPC, to kindly take the discourse forward.
Thanks once again, Kenna. So it was a great introduction. Although I have not been able to see all the panelists so far, I hope they're already connected. To begin, since it's a session talking about the prioritization of the hydrogen, so we start with Mr. Giovanni Machado. I hope I'm getting your name right, Giovanni. So could you take the floor, please?
Thank you so much. It was perfect. Can you see it?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So first, some words about EPE. EPE is the Energy Research Office. Is a governmental body of the Brazilian of Brazil, and it's linked to the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Brazil. It has a similar kind of competence or attribution, the similar role of Energy Information Administration of the U.S. and some other institutions for energy planning all over the world. So hydrogen is already on the Brazilian energy planning, and there is not a national goal regarding capacity or specific targets, but market design and policy are under discussion. Renewables play a key role in the Brazilian power sector. As you can see, it goes over 80% of the electricity supply in Brazil, and it's particularly concentrated on hydroelectricity, but wind and solar are increasing fast. Also, it's important to bear in mind that Brazil has a long-term commitment to hydrogen, and R&D and innovation is not new in Brazil. It's close to 20 years right now, and since the beginning of this year, we have been reinforced the policies through some resolutions of the National Council for Energy Policy, the CNPE of Brazil. The first one oriented the R&D and innovation public and publicly oriented funds to allocate resources in priority areas. One of them is hydrogen. And then in last April, the resolution number 6 defines that the Minister of Mines and Energy must present a proposal for directives on the National Hydrogen Program in collaboration with the Ministry of Science and Technology and Innovation, and also to the Ministry for Regional Development and the technical support of EPE. Governmental R&D and innovation support has brought some results already. So we have some developed for technology in transportation and also in energy storage, and several pilots all over the country. There are some companies already investing in hydrogen in Brazil, and more important, we have developed along this last 20 years some startups in the hydrogen value chain, and this is a very important result because capacity building and human resource will be key to develop this market. Hydrogen is gaining momentum in Brazil, and as you can see, in different kind of technological routes, particularly fuel cell from ethanol have been a lot of investments and commitments in Brazil. Still, of course, an R&D and innovation, but it's getting more business oriented as the market is being developed. Nissan, Toyota, Bosch, and Volkswagen, they have been announced their intention to push ahead with the fuel cell based on ethanol in light and heavy transportation in Brazil. Also, there is some other very important projects, like the plans of electronuclear in Brazil to purify the already production of hydrogen gas to have it in the right specification for the market. The technological park of Itaipu has a lot of technology development, and also they have been providing supporting to capacity building for the green H2 hub in Pecém Port in the state of Ceará. I will say a little bit more about this project in the next slide. And also, it's very interesting to notice the furnace project is still R&D and innovation project based on the policies I mentioned before, and it's based on a hydropower plant that has together solar PV facilities and batteries and hydrogen for energy storage. So in order to take the best energy management of the supply. And hydrogen is getting momentum in Brazil. There are high-scale green projects that have been announced, although all of them are under technical and economical evaluations. The first one is in Rio de Janeiro state. It was signed, MOU was signed between the Fortescue, the Australian corporation, and a support in Rio de Janeiro, and all of those projects are focused on mostly on oriented to the global market. Fortescue is also negotiating MOU to develop green hydrogen plant in Pecém Port in the state of Ceará. That is the next project I will point out. The first announcement regarding MOU was between the Energix, the Pecém Port, and the state of Ceará. And then in the same port, there was another announcement. One of them is related to the CARE, the French corporation, the Pecém Port, and the Ceará state. This port is in the northeast of Brazil, so it has it's very well located to get the markets in Europe and in North America. At the same location, the same port, White Martins is a corporation related to Lind and Praxair in Brazil. And the state of Ceará also signed a MOU to have facilities in the green hydrogen hub at Pecém Port. In another port, also in the northeast of the country, in the state of Pernambuco, in the Swap Port, CARE also signed a MOU with this port to develop both green and blue projects. Neo Energy and the state of Pernambuco also signed a MOU, but it's for developing a pilot plants. Regarding potential, well, Brazil has already a hydrogen market, existing hydrogen market because of the needs of hydrogen as a raw material, as an input for refineries, fertilizers, methanol, mining and metallurgy, and food and other different sectors of the economy. Of course, as mentioned by Mr. Barhav, all of those hydrogen are produced based on natural gas, based on steel reform of the methane. But in any case, there is an opportunity to progressively reduce the carbon footprint of those volumes of hydrogen in Brazil, and also, and maybe more important, opportunity to develop new markets in those hard to abate sectors, and also to connect, coupling the markets of the power market and the industry and fuel markets as a whole. So energy storage will have a key role in this process, as well as biofuels, particularly those advanced biofuels that need hydrogen in their process, such as hydroprocessed ester and fatty acids, and also HVO. So there is a connection between the existing competitive advantage of Brazil in biofuels and the hydrogen market. This will allow us to develop a new market based on existing competitive advantage, both in biofuels and renewables as a whole. So, to wrap up all I've said, some key message. Brazil has a potential to be a key player in the hydrogen market, and we intend to get benefits from the national competitive advantage while creates new ones. We totally agree that renewables are blue chips, from either if it is from hydro, wind, solar, biomass, ethanol, or waste. But we understand that natural gas and nuclear also matters. The fundamental issue is to decarbonize. So if you get carbon-free and CCUS, this could have an important role, at least temporarily, to develop the market and reach economy of scopes, not only economy of scales. So our approach is one of technological neutrality rather than lock-in specific technological routes. And we want to connect and coupling all the markets and develop new markets. And for having that, seek for wide international partnerships will be very important to us. As we like to say, we are developing Brazilian aquarel mostly based on renewables. So that's all for now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Giovanni. Thanks for an excellent presentation. I'm sure all of us actually got to know how well Brazil is moving ahead. Couple of questions which, if you're okay, we can take now, and then maybe later on I can circle back again to you, if it's okay, Giovanni. One or two questions now.
No problem. Okay.
So one of the important things you talked about is that while renewables remain the blue chip, but you are not leaving out natural gas and nuclear. And beneath that, you also mentioned about CCUS. So do you think that in terms of prioritization, while you're looking at green hydrogen in the longer term, and if you could tell us what that period is, and how soon you expect to reach there?
Thanks for the question. First, it's important to have in mind that Brazil has recently, in the last 10 years or so, discovered large net oil and natural gas reserves, resources. And so it will be important to develop this potential. And most of the market, the existing hydrogen market, it's already related to the oil and gas industry. For instance, 90% of the hydrogen market in Brazil is related to refineries and fertilizers. So for fertilizer plants. So it's hard to believe that from the beginning all this potential will be available for green hydrogen because there is, it's part of the monetization strategy of the oil and gas business to the gas mainly. So as we are very committed to climate change, prevent in the Paris Agreement, so it's fundamental to develop ways of reducing the carbon footprint of those gray hydrogen, let's say. But for the long term, and as we move forward, there is a lot of let's say hybrid technologies mixing all the process. For instance, offshore wind is getting related to oil and gas business in Brazil. So some space will be opened for getting some of this. Similarly, hydrogen from biofuels and biomass as a whole will have an important place, for instance, to sustainable aviation fuels to meet the CORSIA targets from 2027 on, and also to decarbonize like have transportation like trucks and other segments difficult to electrify, at least for road. So HVO will be also important in these phases, and to produce HVO you do need hydrogen. So there is a lot of space to clean up the hydrogen production all over the time, while developing the maturity of the technology through to green hydrogen from different routes. Those are my main words. on this.
Thank you. So one quick question before we move on. So you talked about ethanol-based fuel cell. So I just wanted to know, I'm assuming this ethanol is biomass-based. So we are talking about ethanol, which is also green. So how does it compete in terms of price with the other options? Maybe we could have a quick number here.
Okay, the estimations we have are that as of today, the production cost will be between $2.5 to $5 per kilograms of A2. So Brazil is pretty well positioned on these roads.
Thank you. I think that's very good. A $2.5 number sounds very good. So Giovanni, thanks a lot. I'll come back again, circle back again once I've done with all the panelists. I also see on screen Mr. Devandan. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you. Thanks for joining us. But next in line, we go to Mr. Anton Muscavine. Mr. Muscavine, can we have your speech? Are you going to share a presentation, or how do you want to do it?
I think I can share the presentation, yes. I'm glad to see everyone.
Yeah, so if it's okay, we can maybe do a 10-minute presentation and then we can have a set of question answers if it's okay with you. Over to you, Mr. Muscavine.
Yes, I can start. Can you see my presentation? I downloaded it.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Very good. Then I start. Okay, I'm glad to be part of today's discussion. It's really important for us to discuss hydrogen energy development within such a context of BRICS countries' cooperation, and I'm glad to be part of today's team. Let me start with a short introduction of Rosatom. I think part of the audience might not know the company. We are in charge of nuclear power industry development within the Russian Federation. We are the largest company in the world in terms of construction of new nuclear power plants outside of our own country. So we are a leading vendor of nuclear power plants. Our current portfolio is 35 nuclear power units, but in parallel, we are developing many different areas of non-nuclear business and non-energy business that relates to nuclear medicine. We are operating the largest icebreakers fleet. We are I lost my presentation. I'm not sure if you continue seeing it. Yes. And we are the leading developer of renewable projects in Russia. We are constructing and operating wind power plants and supplying electricity to the market. And we are checking different opportunities in new areas of modern energy industry. And one of the topics which is of course attracted our attention recently was hydrogen energy and hydrogen economy. We started developing of that part of Rosatom activity several years ago, and currently we are concentrated on the development of demonstration and commercial projects, and on the development of set of hydrogen technologies. Why we consider hydrogen one of the priority topics in the energy sector is obvious, and I think most of the audience of our today's meeting shares this vision. Of course, this is the universal, ecological, and efficient energy carrier and storage. It will be more efficient in the coming years, but our forecasts, and I think that the world forecasts, show that it can be one of the most efficient energy carrier and storage agents in the coming future. It can be applied in the various industries: transport, heavy industry, and energy. It can become a tool for climate change mitigation, of course. We think what can make it even more valuable is utilization of nuclear power and renewable energy sources power for the production of large volumes of hydrogen. The main areas on which we are working are these four. We are developing the extensive research and development program. We are a part of Russian team of companies and organizations which are developing Russian hydrogen industry and hydrogen development program. We are setting up international hydrogen supply chains, which will allow us to supply hydrogen from Russia to international markets. And we are launching several pilot projects and are currently implementing several feasibility studies with different partners and customers. Talking about the technological chain which we are developing, we concentrate ourselves on all the different stages of hydrogen supply chain. We have several technologies to produce hydrogen, and we have several technologies for infrastructure and for the consumption of hydrogen. For the part of the production, the main idea is to develop the electrolyzer, which will be very efficient for the production of large volumes of hydrogen. And we are currently working on it, and we are planning to launch it into the first commercial projects in the coming 2 to 3 years. On top of that, we see bright perspectives for the blue hydrogen with utilization of steam methane reforming technology and utilization of natural gas, of course, jointly with the technology of carbon capture and storage. And one of the priority technologies in our portfolio is high temperature gas-cooled reactor, which will be combined with the steam methane reformer and will allow the large volumes production of hydrogen with a very low amount of CO2 emissions and very stable generation, very reliable in terms of the cost of this generation. So joining all the advantages of nuclear power. For the infrastructure part, we are developing different kind of cylinders, and for consumption part, hydrogen fuel cells. Talking about the projects, we are developing the strategy of forming several production and hydrogen utilization clusters in Russia. At least 2 of them are here, one West Hydrogen Cluster and the other one is East Hydrogen Cluster. In the western part of Russia, the plan is to utilize the nuclear power to produce hydrogen with the use of electrolyzers and to utilize it in Russia and supply it to the international markets, mainly to the Europe. We are currently on the phase of feasibility study, and the plan is to finish it by the end of this year and start and launch the investment project next year. And first production of hydrogen will start pretty soon. Shall start pretty soon. For the East Hydrogen Cluster, we are launching the full-scale cluster on the territory of Sakhalin. This is a large island on the eastern part of Russian Federation. The idea there is to utilize natural gas for the hydrogen production and using the steam methane reforming technology, and of course the carbon capture and long-term storage of that carbon on the territory of the island. This is one of the most critical issues of the project, and I think of all the similar projects which presume the utilization of natural gas or coal for the production of H2, and all of them will definitely need the effective technology for long-term storage of hydrogen. So the third area is localization, local decarbonization projects in industrial sector, and we are developing several ideas in Russia and outside of Russia. We have signed 3 agreements for the development of first projects. First one with the Japan government, with the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. We agreed to develop the feasibility study for the supply chain of hydrogen from Russia to the Japan. And we are currently on the final stages of the development of the feasibility study, and we assessed different technologies for the hydrogen transportation of large volumes of hydrogen transportation. Second one is between Rosatom, Russian Railway Corporation, and the company Transmash Holding, which is a Russian company developing hydrogen trains. And we agreed to develop a project on the territory of Sakhalin, which will utilize hydrogen trains for the transportation of people on the island. Again, here we have the feasibility study almost finished, and this year we're planning to take the investment decision and proceed with the implementation of the project. We have signed one more agreement with the company Air Liquide, one of the leaders on the hydrogen market and the industrial gases market. That presumes the organization of the large-scale production of hydrogen on the territory of Sakhalin for the export purposes. And we are currently also launching the feasibility study, and after that, the plan is to launch the project. This is the picture, the general concept of the hydrogen cluster on Sakhalin. It is quite common for this kind of clusters or hydrogen valleys in the world. We are planning to produce, utilize, store, and transport hydrogen on the island in all the different industries and transport and energy, in different industrial applications. So we are launching the cluster these days, and are planning to sign to attract partners for the clusters and to sign first agreements with the partners, with the residents of the clusters in the coming months. And of course, here we are planning to engage several governmental supporting measures, governmental incentives pretty soon. And on the On the final slide, I would just like to outline that Rosatom is working on the set of hydrogen development, on the hydrogen production, transportation, storage, and utilization technologies. We are implementing several projects in Russia, and we have several projects ideas outside of Russia, and pretty soon we are planning to launch first ones into the feasibility studies phase. And we are very open for the technological and strategic partnerships with the countries of BRICS. And I'm glad to be part of today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muscovin. That was very, very informative, and we're really happy to know that Rosatom is moving forward on the hydrogen side as well. So a couple of quick questions. One, you talked about high temperature reactor. So are you by any chance also looking at high temperature electrolysis for production of hydrogen?
Yeah, of course, those technologies which I have shown is only the set of the priority of the current stage of the development of our technologies portfolio, but we are launching studies on different others, like pyrolysis, like high temperature electrolysis, and other ways of hydrogen production. And we think that in the coming years, maybe in 5 years, we'll definitely see a different set of technologies which will be utilizing for the hydrogen production. High temperature electrolysis is definitely one of them. We are working in this regard.
So among the pilot projects you mentioned, so one which definitely caught attention was the hydrogen fuel cell train. So could you please elaborate on that if you can?
Yeah, on the hydrogen train, the plan is to use 7 trains in the pilot phase of the project, all of them working on Sakhalin Island, and some of them consist of two cabins, some of them of 3, and all of them will be working fully on hydrogen, providing electricity for the train's propulsion, providing electricity for the heating of the train in the time of low temperatures. And we will be utilizing either steam methane reforming technologies for hydrogen production, which will be one small SMR producing hydrogen, and we will be delivering the hydrogen to the refueling stations by trucks. We have 2 refueling stations on the route of the trains, the corresponding storages at the site of the refueling stations. And the other concept is utilization of electrolysis at the place of refueling stations. First one is cheaper, of course, but is maybe less reliable and less, and we will have less potential to utilize that concept in the other parts of Russia where we are missing the supplies of gas, where we have electricity but we don't have gas. So both are interesting for us, and I think maybe at the final stage of the decision-making process, we will choose one of them, and so we'll go into the project with it. And of course, the large plan is to utilize hydrogen trains on the major part of Russia after that pilot phase on Sakhalin, and we are testing several railway systems in Russia in several regions for the implementation of more or less the same project in the next phase of it.
Thank you, Mr. Anton Muscovin. So that was a great presentation. So thanks once again. Kindly stay on. We'll probably have a few more questions once we are completed with the other panelists. So
Thank you.
I take this opportunity now to welcome Mr. Vivek Devandan, Additional Secretary, Government of India. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mohit. It's my privilege to participate in this panel discussion on prioritizing green hydrogen applications in country's energy policy framework with learnings from various business cases and pilot projects across the globe. My fellow panelists, Mr. Yoni Macado from Brazil and Mr. Moscovin Anton from Russia have made excellent presentation. And we are looking forward for presentation by Mr. Barry from South Africa and Ms. Fu Tiani from China. Let me start with this policy and investment decision which are required for promoting green hydrogen, which will include creating demand and supporting infrastructure development like reduction of cost of solar power, removing interstate transmission charges for electricity being used for hydrogen generation. We are also to look for lowering the cost of hydrogen and related technologies. We also have to work on standards and safety regulations for hydrogen related infrastructure, and we need to work out time-bound targets for percent reduction of fossil fuel use, say by the year 2030. Let me reiterate that India is signatory to Paris Agreement 2015, and we have committed to, as per our nationally determined contribution, that we are going to increase our installed capacity by from non-fossil fuel to about 40% by the year 2030. And we are going to overachieve this target because by the end of March 2021, we already touched 38% of installed capacity from non-fossil fuel. And it is likely that the total installed capacity based on non-fossil fuel in India by 2030 will reach about 60% of our total installed capacity. Let me just give you a brief background about the utilization of hydrogen in India. It is estimated that about 6.7 million metric ton of hydrogen is consumed annually in India at present, and about 99% of this quantity is utilized in petroleum refining, that is about 3.6 million metric ton, and manufacturing of ammonia for fertilizer, that is about 3 million metric ton. In fertilizer production, hydrogen is a key input for production of ammonia, which is used as a base material for urea and other complex fertilizers. In petroleum refining, hydrogen is mainly used for reducing sulfur content of fuels like desulfurization and conversion of heavier feedstock to more valuable products through hydrocracking. Considering the growth projections in refining, fertilizer and other sectors by 2030, the annual demand for hydrogen is expected to grow to about 11.7 million metric ton per annum in India, which will comprise of 6.8 million metric ton in refining and 4.6 million metric ton in hydrogen production and 0.3 million metric ton in other sectors. Almost all of the hydrogen used in fertilizer production and petroleum refining is grey hydrogen, which is sourced from fossil fuels such as natural gas or naphtha. Currently, green hydrogen produced through electrolysis using renewable energy is estimated to cost about $4.7 per kg. This estimation considers the capex of solar PV at the rate of about $0.24 million per megawatt. Electrolyzer capex at about $900 per kilowatt and electrolyzer efficiency of 66.5%, while considering electrolyzer life as 75,000 hours. In comparison, green hydrogen production is quite cheap and costs about $1.7 per kg at the current liquefied natural gas prices of $6 per million metric British thermal unit. Mandating a small share of green hydrogen in those industrial processes which consume grey hydrogen could create a substantial market with nominal cost implication on end products. Projections suggest that with economies of scale and falling cost of renewable energy and electrolyzers, green hydrogen could become cost competitive with gray hydrogen over the next decade. The observed global practices suggest that if entire renewable energy is to be utilized for green hydrogen production system, the least cost of green hydrogen production is expected to be achieved with electrolyzer capacity about 50% of the renewable energy capacity, that is about 15 gigawatt by the year 2030. The unrestricted banking or 24/7 renewable energy through open access would reduce the electrolyzer requirement to about 25% of renewable energy capacity, that is about 75 gigawatt by 2030 in India, and also lower the green hydrogen production cost. Technology and cost trends for green hydrogen production at scale are evolving rapidly. Pursuing procurement of green hydrogen through transparent competitive bidding will foster competition and induce innovation in approaches to achieve the lowest possible price. To facilitate cost competitive green hydrogen production, necessary steps will be taken to enable unrestricted banking and ensure availability of firm renewable power via open access at attractive prices. In India, we are proposing to mandate the use of minimum percent of green hydrogen in the total consumption of hydrogen in fertilizer production and petroleum refining. This will reduce the country's dependence on imported natural gas, apart from reducing the carbon footprint of this industrial process. We are contemplating green hydrogen consumption obligation in fertilizer production and petroleum refining, which will vary from 0.15% next year to about 10% in the year 2030. It is estimated that mandating 0.15% of green hydrogen consumption obligation in fertilizer production and petroleum refining will translate into green hydrogen requirement of about 12,000 metric ton per annum. This amount of green hydrogen will save consumption about 36,000 metric ton per annum of natural gas that is primarily imported, and avoid about 110,000 metric ton per annum of carbon dioxide emissions. It is estimated that hydrogen demand will grow at an average rate of 4.5% per annum in the fertilizer sector and 7.4% per annum in the refining sector by the year 2030. In view of this, increasing the green hydrogen consumption obligation to about 10% by the year 2030 will result in natural gas saving of about 3.6 million metric ton per annum and carbon dioxide emission reduction about 10 million metric ton per annum. A renewable energy generation capacity about 30 gigawatt would be required to produce approximately 1.1 million metric ton per annum of green hydrogen required to fulfill the green hydrogen consumption obligation requirement by the year 2030. So we have contemplated which are the low-hanging fruits in India. The low-hanging fruits include the blending of green hydrogen with CNG, the hydrogen-based transportation, like using green hydrogen-based commercial vehicle like bus and trucks. This will significantly reduce liquid fuel imports like diesel and greenhouse gas emissions. Blending of green hydrogen in refining, I already elaborated that we are contemplating green hydrogen consumption obligation of 10% in refining sector. The longer lead time of more than 3 years would be required for making green chemicals like green ammonia. In fact, NTPC is setting up 2 plants. One is having capacity of 20 tons per day and another with capacity of 50 tons per day. NTPC is also planning green methanol plant with the capacity of 10 ton per day facility. Ammonia could also be used as large-scale energy storage because ammonia provides the missing link in hydrogen storage for clean energy due to its high energy content and ease of transportation. The ammonia gas liquefies easily under light pressure and chilling for transportation to power plant to generate carbon-free electricity. Ammonia could also be used as fuel for power generation for our existing gas-based power plants to generate electricity. In India, we have about 24,000 megawatt capacity of gas, And out of this, about 8,000 megawatt capacity is stranded if because of lack of availability of domestic gas, and the cost of imported LNG is quite high, and they are not able to compete with the other sources like coal-fired power. If ammonia can be used as fuel for our existing gas-based power plant, then our the standard gas power plants would become fully operational. Ammonia can also be cracked into hydrogen and then can be used as in our existing power plants as well with zero carbon footprint. We also contemplated about the import and export of green hydrogen. Since renewable potential of India is very high and we are targeting about 450 gigawatt of renewable by the year 2030, we may not require to import green hydrogen, and suitable policy implemented will develop green hydrogen facilities in major and replace fossil fuel. We are targeting exports in the long term, not in the next few years. The sectoral demand of hydrogen is very high in the chemical industry and refinery. Thus, the surplus green hydrogen will not be there. Additionally, with new applications like in mobility and power generation, the demand in India for green hydrogen will even be more. We have also thought about partnering with industry to co-create National Green Hydrogen Mission. Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has already announced setting up of new hydrogen mission, and they have formed several subcommittees from the industry bodies like Confederation of Indian Industry, FICCI, etc. They also started sector-specific dialogues with respect to manufacturing sector, mobility, and fertilizers. With regard to application-specific initiative, they have taken up microgrids in off-grid location like Ladakh, Andaman, and Nicobar, and energy storage through green ammonia or methanol is also being contemplated. As an outcome of strategic partnership in BRICS, which will help in prioritizing the implementation of green hydrogen, we suggest that at country level, government-to-government cooperation may take place. We invite Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa to have more of strategic partnership for green hydrogen initiative. There could be potential for industry-to-industry cooperation like NTPC and ESCOM. There is also potential for specific application like fuel cell manufacturing and hydrogen from biomass. Since I have told you that we are targeting about 450 gigawatt of renewable capacity by the year 2000, since renewable energy is intermittent in nature and is not available 24/7, will require huge storage facilities like battery energy storage or pump storage or hydrogen fuel cell storage. In fact, our Central Electricity Authority, the technical arm of Ministry of Power, has worked out optimal generation mix for the year 2030, which involves about total requirement or total installed capacity by the year 2030 would be about 817 gigawatt. Out of this, 240 gigawatt will come from solar power, 140 gigawatt will come from wind power, and about 60 gigawatt will come from hydrogen. So huge substantial contribution will come from the renewable energy. And to meet this intermittency of renewable energy, our requirement for the storage in terms of battery energy storage will be to the tune of about 27 gigawatt hour, 27 gigawatt capacity with 4 hour capacity amounting to about 108,000 megawatt hour requirement. Will also require pump storage facility about 10,000 megawatt. I hope that today's deliberation on green hydrogen initiative will lead to further cooperation among the BRICS member countries. I wish all the best to all the member countries and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Devandan. That was very, very informative. You set out in great detail the initiatives being taken by India and being contemplated by India. So if you have, we could take a few questions now, or we could come back later. So one of the things which I wanted to...
Wait, we can take the questions later. Let the other panelist complete his presenter, Mr. Barry. Let him take his intervention, and we can take questions together.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So next in line, may I now request Ms. Fu Tianyi, if she is with us, you could maybe join us for a quick presentation from China. I don't see her, so maybe. Ms. Fu Tianyi, are you there?
Hi, I'm Fu Tianyi from China. I'm with the National Energy Administration of China. But however, I have informed the organizer that I will not attend the discussion today. So thank you for your insight, and I have learned a lot from your input, and I will keep on this pace to learn more about the hydrogen development in BRICS and the cooperation potentials within us. So thank you for your kind introduction, and I will just listen to your insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ms. Tianyi. We now move on to Mr. Barry Bredenkamp from South Africa. If you could come on, switch on your camera, please, and take the floor.
Good afternoon, Program Director, esteemed guests, fellow panelists. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak to you today from fairly chilly South Africa. We're in winter now, mid-afternoon, but always good to speak to you. I do have a presentation that I won't go through the whole presentation, I'll just share some slides out of it. But I would just like to mention that in South Africa, the hydrogen space is a very contested space. Everyone is working on hydrogen. We're getting a lot of support. We are getting a lot of collaboration locally and internationally with the private sector, the public sector. And I'm joined by my colleagues from our shareholder company, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, who are on the line with me, and they will also assist. So let me just get to the presentation. If you will just bear with me 1 second, I'll get to that now. I just want to open that. But as I said, we're talking about a very, very contested space in South Africa at the moment, with a huge amount of interest. So South Africa currently has got a energy constraint. You've probably read about it before. You've probably heard about it in previous presentations. We are sitting with a situation where our demand, and especially now in the winter, our demand is exceeding our supply operations. So we are looking for solutions all the time. We are desperate to find clean solutions, and being a net producer or generator of coal-fired power in the South Africa over the last 100 years or so. So when we talk about the hydrogen society in South Africa, there's various aspects and various objectives from the South African point of view, but due to the current situation with electricity, we have absolutely no option but to focus on green hydrogen. Although we do have one CCUS project where blue hydrogen will come to the fore, that is done by one of our sister departments, the Council for Geosciences, has been in the development phase for quite a while now, but is starting to take a shape. Obviously, the cost involved with that is exorbitant, and that is a bit of a barrier. But as I said, in South Africa, hydrogen is contested. We have multiple ministries. We're talking BRICS. We're talking about hydrogen. And when we talk about hydrogen, it is cross-cutting over a number of ministries. Yes, our Department of Mineral Resources and Energy are the representatives on this group, are taking a lead. But because of the new phases in which we're developing around hydrogen, a lot of the work is still on the science and innovation front, and therefore we will be sharing 1 or 2 slides from my colleague from the Department of Science and Innovation, who you're familiar with, Dr. Rebecca Maziramuli. She unfortunately is on holiday at this stage, and one of her colleagues is unfortunately booked off with the sick at this moment. So I've agreed to stand in. But I'm by no means the sole person dealing with hydrogen in South Africa. We have people from all ministries very involved, and this is supported right from the top through our state president in his presentations and talks to Parliament over the recent while. So the one slide I want to share with you is, and this was discussed broadly yesterday by my colleague, Mr. Cherry, in the plenary sessions, and that is that South Africa has been on a journey looking at hydrogen from as early as 2007. In 2007, we established a center known as HISA, the HISA Center of Competence, and that is obviously Hydrogen South Africa, the acronym for Hydrogen South Africa, and started doing really some pioneering work in 2007. We developed over the years, we got an advisory board with a lot of academics involved, guiding the work that they were doing. Our cabinet of government in 2007, late 2007, approved the National Hydrogen South Africa Research, Development and Innovation Strategy. And then we progressed through various phases, and you'll get this presentation, so you'll be able to see this. We were doing some pilot projects, as you'll see in 2015. We developed some prototypes for targeted niche applications such as golf carts, forklifts in industrial applications. We then went through a review and then engaged for another 5-year period. We're now entering into the third 5-year period. But towards 2017 is when things really started coming together, and we needed to look at the funding model around this RDI initiative, and that's where the private sector started getting involved in South Africa, predominantly around the mining sector. We have one of our key drivers in the economy is mining, and the mining sector in South Africa came on board and is supporting and working very closely with the various government agencies to make this happen in South Africa. And we've seen some breakthroughs and some of the work that some of our mining companies have developed in South Africa, especially around your haulage trucks, these very large, huge trucks that are used in open cast mining, has also been transferred to countries like Chile, where the mine has operations in Chile, and they're doing a lot of work around hydrogen vehicles and e-mobility in the mining sector, not only in South Africa, but in Chile as well. Our HISO unit developed a fuel cell unit, which was launched to power a rural school, a very small school in a rural setting. And we had products, and I have got products available for commercial sales of catalysts and membrane electrode assemblies. Now, with the globe moving towards hydrogen, and with so much hype around hydrogen, we're moving to the next level. And so we started in 2020 with the development of the High-Level Hydrogen Society Roadmap for South Africa, which is a very thorough document. It hasn't been released for public consumption yet. It is still going through the internal channels for comments. But this document, once released, you will be given a copy, and you'll see that there is some real good aspirations for green hydrogen in South Africa going forward. But given the current situation, I just wanted to mention one of the latest developments right at the top. A triple helix model of innovation was facilitated a rapid response to our government's COVID-19 request for fuel cells for field hospitals. And we've seen some of the larger hospitals where we've had to build overflow facilities as a result of the COVID situation now being powered with fuel cells, which is something that has got a dual purpose, obviously the clean energy component, and definitely the COVID situation being addressed at the same time. We must state categorically that when it comes to fuel cells specifically, South Africa is produces in excess of 70% of the world's platinum. We are looking for markets. The platinum prices fluctuate, but they're quite low now as a result of the motor vehicle industry moving to more cleaner technologies. So where that was used for catalytic converters in exhaust systems, that demand is slowing down. We've had to look for new markets for our platinum, and what better way than to use this in hydrogen fuel cells. So there's other motives besides the clean energy component, but that is the key driver. I don't want to go into all the stakeholders and what the aspirations are, but we do want to unlock the hydrogen potential in South Africa. So the slides with a lot of text and about the stakeholders that have been consulted, as you'll see, 50 stakeholders in South Africa consulted. That excludes the international interest that has been shown in South Africa's hydrogen market. Obviously, some of the more developed countries and some of the countries in Europe have already quantified their potential demand for hydrogen, realizing that they will not be able to produce those volumes of hydrogen. They're looking for markets, and they're already engaging South Africa as a potential net exporter of hydrogen to other countries. Yes, the transport is a problem at this stage. The cost of transport is a problem. Ideally, you want to look at pipelines, and we don't have pipelines. We've situated right at the bottom of the African continent. We don't have pipelines that extend to some of these developed markets that have shown an interest. We've done a whole theory of change around the hydrogen society in South Africa with a focus on green hydrogen, and gone through all the components of a theory of change, and have added this to our NDPs for aspirations to a net carbon zero society in 2050. So we have various subcomponents in the program. We have a technology park using for demonstration. We have a labor transition, because bearing in mind the people that work in hydrogen these are people we haven't had a hydrogen engineering type course or degree over the years. We're looking at people with electrical engineering expertise. We're looking at people with chemical engineering expertise. We're looking at people with other disciplines of expertise, bring it into the party. And we need to bring these skills together, reskill, and come up with skills that can address hydrogen specifically. So this is creating a whole new reskilling opportunity, and we're working with some of our institutions of higher learning. The point I made about looking for platinum markets, we have a platinum valley. It's South Africa's version of a hydrogen valley. It stretches from the port in Durban on the east coast all the way up to one of the biggest platinum mines in the northwestern part of the country, and it goes all the way through Johannesburg, all the way across the country, where you have various platinum producers and various off-takers of hydrogen in this whole value chain, or this valley, and then obviously using Durban as an export harbour or port for potential exports. And then hydrogen, HISA, we've spoken about, and then there's a monitoring and learning process. So just the last one I want to share with you, as I said, we will share these presentations. This just gives you a snapshot of some of the people that we're working with. We're representing the DMRE, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, so you won't see their logo there because we are part of the host of this. But other departments are Science and Innovation, Higher Education and Training, and the DTIC, which is the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in South Africa. So there you're already looking at 4 ministries. You bring in other ministries like the Department of Environment, or we have a department called Department of Forestry, Fishery and Environment, huge role player, and many others. So when you're dealing with multiple ministries, it becomes very, very difficult. You have to align activities. Different ministries are working at different paces. But in order for this hydrogen economy to succeed, all these ministries have to integrate their work around hydrogen, and that is what we are aiming to achieve. You will see in the second row, SUNEDI is the organization I represent, the South African National Energy Development Institute, which is an agency of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. And then we have our sector, education, training authorities, universities, HISA, and then very important, Anglo-American, a global mining company with its roots in South Africa. Sasol, who is a world leader in coal to gas technology and coal to petroleum. They're doing a lot of work around hydrogen at their plants, liquid petroleum plants. And then Eskom, our national utility, obviously in their transition to a clean and green society in South Africa. So taking all of that into consideration, we do realize that the hydrogen economy, the hydrogen challenge, the move to green hydrogen, it's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. That is the way the world is moving. South Africa is trying to be at the forefront of developments, and the stated objectives are clear. the integration of the work streams, the integration of international interests and export and import markets is something that has to be addressed with cross-border trade barriers, etc. But that is something that will definitely be easily overcome over the years to come. We anticipate in the next 5 years that you'll see a significant difference once our roadmap has been published. That will be the blueprint for further deliberation or further development in South Africa. And as I said, the primary drive will be green hydrogen, although there's a small trace of blue hydrogen in our CCUS project. But green hydrogen with our access to renewable resources like wind and sun, as well as biomass, and we heard about yesterday about biomass in Brazil used as part of their hydrogen program. That is definitely something that will in South Africa come to the fore. But at the end of the day, besides the clean revolution, we're also looking at a huge development around skills and job creation, which is sorely needed in South Africa, where we have unemployment levels of up in excess of 40%. So that's the contribution from South Africa at this stage. And I once again welcome the opportunity and thank you for the opportunity. And my colleagues from the department might join us in the panel for further responses to the question. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Bredenkamp. That was, I think, very, very good, and we're really impressed with the fact that you started this journey almost, in 2007, and it's a good period of time, and you've been able to dwell on it for a long time. It's actually interesting to note that South Africa also has so far a largely coal-based electricity industry, and which is also in a way responsible for pushing South Africa towards green hydrogen. And we're actually happy to note that. So one good, also one interesting thing you mentioned was about the reskilling opportunity. So we would like to understand, how do you see reskilling in terms of, is it in terms of transition you're looking at, reskilling of jobs, moving away from coal, or how do you look at it?
Yes, it's a number of areas, but definitely in South Africa, there's a big focus because we have a coal-dominated society. So as part of our overall just energy transition, or the JET program in the energy sector, we're looking at various activities to reskill people that are predominantly occupied in coal mining activities and coal fire generation, utility generation scale. However, but on the hydrogen side, we are working with higher education institutions to look at reskilling people that we're sitting with people, mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, electrical engineers, qualified in their disciplines, but not necessarily being able to find jobs in the current scenario where we have a high unemployment level, very low economic growth, and that has all been exacerbated by the COVID situation. So we're trying to look with higher education to come up with a type of integrated resource, specialist resource, let's call it, for the lack of a better word, a hydrogen practitioner, or a hydrogen engineer, or a hydrogen specialist. It's combining facets of the engineering faculties, the different engineering, chemical, industrial, electrical, mechanical, chemical, as I've mentioned, and to bring them into a type of a curriculum where you can train people who are maybe dedicated in one specific discipline to now widen their horizon and to get involved in this mainstream hydrogen. Because once it really kicks off, there is going to be so much potential, especially in South Africa in the situation we find ourselves. So we need to make sure that we can face this challenge head on with the correct skills and the people that will have the necessary background. And we have to already start developing that so people can start specializing in this area as opposed to staying in those old silo mentalities of either electrical engineer or mechanical engineer, but looking at integrating and moving towards something which is going to be a career of the future.
That's great, Mr. Bredenkamp. Moving to Mr. Devandan, so you very clearly pointed out all the numbers and what the steps are being taken by the government of India. So one important thing you also mentioned was how G2G cooperation on the green hydrogen side, and I'm assuming you were talking more in terms of technological or cooperation. So if we also add the reskilling part to it, so would you expand in terms of what could be the areas of cooperation between the BRICS countries when you're looking at green hydrogen or development of green hydrogen going forward?
Thank you, Mohit, for raising this question. I hope that the major issue for cooperation, government to government cooperation among the BRICS country would be how to reduce the cost of green hydrogen through electrolysis process. Right now, the cost of green hydrogen is almost 1/3 of the cost of green hydrogen which is produced through electrolysis. As I have mentioned that the cost is about $4.72 per kg. And which has come out very clearly from the presentation by Brazil, by Russia, South Africa, that they're all working on this field. Perhaps more of government to government cooperation and the technological innovation which is required to bring down the cost of production of green hydrogen, that would be the first challenge, and that is perhaps area where we need to cooperate with each other more actively. Second is the use of green hydrogen in transportation. It has tremendous potential, like use of green hydrogen in buses and trucks. Again, the cost economics is the main challenge. Until unless we are able to bring down the cost of green hydrogen, which could be used for transportation business, it will not lead to a larger use of green hydrogen or use of hydrogen for transportation. But there is tremendous potential. Let me just highlight that India is leading this global campaign of EV 30 at the rate of 30. It means that by the end of the year 2030, all the new vehicle registration, the 30% of new vehicle registration should come from electric vehicle segment. To give you an overall picture, in India there are about 30 crore vehicles have been registered from 1951 to say till the year March 2021, and in the year 2019-20 about 2 crore, about 20 million vehicles, new vehicles were registered in India. And last year, because of COVID pandemic, the number of new vehicle registration had come down to about 15 million new vehicle. If we assume this trajectory of about 4.5 or 5% escalation of per annum in terms of new vehicle registration, by the year of 2030, about 50 million vehicles, new vehicles would be registered every year. And if you are talking about 30% of that share, about 15 million electric vehicle segment we are targeting. This electrical vehicle segment, if we are able to make major breakthrough, if we are able to bring down the cost of hydrogen production, then major component of this electric vehicle in terms of large vehicles like buses and trucks can be shifted towards hydrogen mobility. That is the total area or likely scope of cooperation among the BRICS countries that I wanted to highlight.
Thank you, Mr. Devandan. In fact, that gives me a good point to move on to Mr. Muscovin. As Mr. Devandan mentioned, that in terms of hydrogen mobility, that's one good area of cooperation. So does Russia also look at hydrogen mobility as a possible? You did talk about the hydrogen-based train, but if you're looking at maybe buses or long-haul trucks or even cars, so do you see Russia going down that path?
Yes, thank you. Really, we have the first pilot projects in the railway system. That one which we are launching on Sakhalin. And to be clear, we have no hydrogen refueling stations right now in Russia. So there is no hydrogen mobility at the current stage of the development of our program. But this is definitely one of the priorities. And we think that the first and most bright results we may reach through the development of hydrogen technologies, projects, and infrastructure for the mobility sector. The first one of the next pilot projects we see in Moscow. And Moscow government have already said that they are interested in launching several hydrogen buses in the city. And there are several concepts on how to launch that kind of project. Several hydrogen buses vendors are working to provide Moscow with their competence and products. And we were Rosatom is one of the participants of that discussion. And our role is mainly the developer of infrastructure. We think to partner with several Russian and international players to launch first hydrogen refueling stations in Moscow, and to set up all the needed infrastructure for the launching of first commercial buses. And on top of that, definitely that shall be some municipal transport in Moscow, like the trash moving vans, or something like this, which may work within the city. And there are several discussions on city-to-city distant commercial trucks and buses for a distance of around 500 to 600 kilometers. And the plan is to launch one of a couple of this kind of hydrogen routes, hydrogen mobility long routes. And to my opinion, that might be like a second stage of the development of the hydrogen mobility sector in Russia.
Thank you, Mr. Moscovin. Mr. Barry Bredenkamp, if you can come back to you, I think one of the points which we also probably need to discuss in terms of prioritization. So do you see a really important role for blue hydrogen? Because I heard you saying that CCS is also new phase, because that's a view we also have, that carbon capture and sequestration. We are looking at carbon capture and utilization, but sequestration we feel is something which is not a very viable or technically feasible solution. So what's your view on that?
Yes, I must agree with you. Although, in theory, it sounds very good. It sounds it's something to aspire towards. But given the current technologies, given the cost of doing that, it is way beyond our reach. So it's there on the agenda. We don't want to lose sight of it, but it's definitely not a priority. The top priority is green hydrogen across the board, with the private sector as well as the public sector.
Mr. Giovanni, I just wanted to come back to you on one point which you had mentioned about the power market and the industry coupling. So how do you see that happening? Because that could actually give us a lot of insight into finding large use cases for hydrogen, which is what is potentially one of the important things to have so that we can actually bring down the cost. Mr. Giovanni?
Thank you for the question. Well, as we all know, renewables like wind and solar has a challenge of variability of the supply, and the share of those sources in Brazil is getting bigger and bigger. It's basically like 2/3 of the new capacity in power sector in Brazil comes from renewables. And so since the hydropower system in Brazil is becoming more and more vulnerable to the weather and rain seasons because of the difficulties, the challenges to build new reservoir dams. So basically the new hydro are runoff river. So you cannot stabilize and assure the reliability of the system if you don't have a lot of reservoir system in hydropower plants anymore. So either you will need like dispatchable thermal power plants or energy storage. So this is an opportunity to market coupling between power sector and industry sector and also transportation. So we see in the long term the system will change a lot, and it won't be like unidirectional anymore. So it will be bi-directional from having like the consumers that will be also producers with decentralized generation, basically related to solar PV, for instance, but also from other sources. But and then you will need to have like a system that could have a lot of flexibility to address the reliability matter. So that's why hydrogen is so important in assure the market coupling, because it could provide like a longer term long service, like you can use for more time than batteries, for instance. Batteries is very good for intraday, but not for like long seasons variation. So we see hydrogen as a key carrier to promote those market coupling.
Thank you, Mr. Giovanni. So Mr. Devandan, probably the last question for you, and maybe we'll have to wind up after that. So you did mention that the green hydrogen purchase obligation and for the fertilizer and the refining industry ratchets up to 10% by 2030. So I was just wondering, will it be possible to accelerate this pace, and what kind of incentives or the initiatives or policy framework government would like to keep? Because potentially, as you very rightly mentioned, with 450 renewable power, India is poised to have a huge share. And putting so much electricity into the grid is probably not the best way to run the grid. So can we look at the option of actually maybe, say, hypothetically doubling this target or whatever? So over to you, Mr. Kumar.
In fact, this 10% this green hydrogen consumption obligation has been worked out after consultation with fertilizer and petroleum industry, actually. But as you have seen that ethanol blending, initially the target was 20% ethanol blending by the year 2030. But when we saw the encouraging results, we have brought down this target of 20% blending of ethanol to 2025. So 5 years it has been accelerated. Similarly, in terms of green hydrogen consumption obligation, if we see positive result, more acceptability, and if perhaps some cost reduction takes place, there is merit in accelerating this pace, and we'll be more than happy to enhance this green hydrogen consumption obligations, say about 20%. But it will depend on the initial 1 or 2 years experience and the acceptability from fertilizer and refining sector in India.
Great, sir. That was great to hear, particularly at NTPC, because we are very keen to ramp up the green hydrogen portfolio that we are working on as part of our renewables portfolio. So, gentlemen, it was a fantastic presentation by all of you. I really thank all of you for your time and for taking the questions. We all realize that we have to work together. This is an area which is developing. It could develop fast. It could be one of the ways in which the whole global strategy towards decarbonization and climate change efforts, mitigation efforts, can be very, very helpful for all of us. So thanks a lot once again. I'll now hand it over to Kenashri to take it forward. Kena, please.
Thank you so much to the panelists for sharing your country's perspective and experience on the topic of discussion. And thank you so much, Mr. Bhargava, for steering the panel discussion seamlessly as a moderator. It was indeed very enriching and made us think beyond the obvious. We are lagging in the schedule by a couple of minutes, so without any further ado, we move ahead to the second panel discussion of the day. And the topic is financing options and institutional support for driving investments in green hydrogen. I now invite moderator for the session, Mr. Shubhranshu Patnaik, Senior Partner from Deloitte. The discussion will be around 45 minutes, followed by question and answer session. Over to you, Patnaik, sir.
Thank you so much, Kenashri. I hope I'm audible.
You are, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So in the panel today, we will have Mr. Machado from Brazil. He was there in the earlier panel, of course. Mr. Baeda from Russia, I think is running late. He might join in a little later. Ms. Fu from China, and Mr. Barry, who you also heard in the earlier session. So that's the makeup of the panel today. And the topic is essentially looking at financing options. Of course, this is not a commercially established segment. So there are obvious choices to be made around policy and regulations, around offtake guarantees and such before we talk about financing. So there's a lot to learn from early experiences that member countries are experiencing. And we'll focus somewhat along those lines. Of course, to talk about the attractiveness of hydrogen, that's kind of been addressed in the earlier sessions. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time around that. But just to summarize, we know the power of hydrogen as a technology, particularly to meet our climate change goals, right, going forward. And the power of the technology is not just in its conversion, but the fact that it is a technology which can be multiply used in various forms, not just from an electrification perspective, but also from storage and its use of the fuel itself, right? And so that holds multiple unlocking capabilities around various parts of the decarbonization puzzle. So one part could also obviously be around the hard-to-abate sectors, and we heard the Honorable Additional Secretary speak about targets for some of those, for instance, fertilizer or cement going forward, which is an extremely hard sector to decarbonize, given that it uses primary fuel as coal sometimes. And so therefore, those are some of the segments that hydrogen will start to see traction when there is collective agreement globally around how to decarbonize those sectors in an accelerated pathway. But there are obvious low-hanging areas from a demand perspective. And those are areas that got discussed in the earlier session, I guess, around, for instance, blending in the gas grid, around picking up some of the segments which already use gray hydrogen. How do you bring about green hydrogen obligations on them? Looking at long-haul transportation in the long run, and some other segments that we can talk about from an intermediary perspective. So, for instance, methanol, ammonia, and all that, which have tremendous potential going forward. What we'll do is, in this segment, we will try and focus on 2 or 3 areas after I call upon each of the panelists to express their views on financing and how they look at financing from the perspective of, jump-starting some of these hydrogen projects at scale in their countries. But the way we would like to focus, or I would like to focus this discussion, and it's free to opinions from the panel, of course, is start possibly with looking at policy and regulatory choices which are essential to drive some of these adoptions, and how is that how is that being approached? Because it's a continuous subject. I don't think it's a settled issue. So let's learn a little more about that from our participant representatives. The second is around how to create a bankable offtake arrangement, right? How do you focus on demand? And that will be the underlying criteria for financing. So how was demand kind of ensured in the projects that we spoke about in the earlier segment? How was a bankable offtake arrangement established in those? And third, going forward, is the whole focus around which are the segments that we see prioritized in terms of commercial adoption, and which are the ones which will possibly come a little later as the technology and the financing cost curves improve. So what I'll do is possibly invite each of the panelists now. Maybe I can start with Mr. Machado, if you're there, sir, to express your views on how projects could be financed. I know it's extremely early stage, but what are the drivers for getting financing? What kind of de-risking capabilities would you like to build into projects? I know the priority projects that Brazil is considering to get financing into this sector. So over to you, Mr. Machado.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. As I said in the previous panel, the first thing is related to provide funds to R&D and innovation, because without R&D and innovation, the costs will not going down, and then you will need the subsidies and the mandates forever. So it's very important to provide, to assure funds to R&D and innovation. Second, it's fundamental to remove barriers mainly not only barriers to business developers, but also to remove the asymmetry of information. That's something that Brazil is really concerned about. We want to provide all the information about the existing market, market potential, suppliers, value chain, and also capacity buildings and human resource supply to the projects. So we understand that by reducing the asymmetry of information, you do a lot for business developers. Finally, there is a lot of financial arrangements already for renewables in Brazil and worldwide. So to take advantage of this already available structure will faster the development of the financing and provide funds to commercial projects. Also, by assuring a competitive marketplace, you provide a good business environment for foreign funds and investors to come to our countries and to take advantage of the renewables energy potentials that our countries have. I mention our countries because I'm taking the idea that this is the truth for all the BRICS countries. And finally, there is a broad range of new financial instruments like the green bonds, green finance that could be used to support the hydrogen projects and investments. So I think it's also important to match the energy policies and market design to the climate policies and climate market design. Because if you take all the parts together, then you have a totally different picture of the situation, and we need all those different tools to deliver hydrogen economy, in our opinion. Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Let me come to Mr. Bergkamp next. Apologies, I think I pronounced his wrong, Bredenkamp. Mr. Bredenkamp, if I can come to you next, you spoke about the mining transformation through hydrogen in your earlier session. Is there clarity around what are the set of incentives and regulations you're looking at, moderating to make that viable to start with, because it is an early stage experiment in that sense. And also around any thoughts around how that's getting financed, if we can get some insights on that. And then you could obviously also delve on the broader issues of financing, but maybe some specific insights around that project could possibly help.
Yes, certainly. And it's a very interesting topic. So like any new technology or new initiative, the market, the barriers, as my Brazilian colleague spoke, are quite vast. We have external drivers right now in these targets that we have set ourselves for emissions and the decarbonization of the industry and the move towards a net zero carbon economy by 2050 in line with the IEA's targets, which is a tall order. So all of these things, when you factor the cost of those into the equation, then the hydrogen options are starting to look a bit more feasible. Not viable at this stage. With the work that we're seeing with the mining companies in South Africa on the heavy haulage trucks, South Africa has a fairly good RD&I tax incentive. So for the private sector to get involved in R&D, they get a fairly good rebate. So the R&D tax incentive in South Africa is 150% of the investment in the R&D. So for every dollar we use South African rands in South Africa, for every dollar you invest in R&D, you can claim $1.50 back from our tax services. So the R&D tax incentive is quite lucrative. Whether they're using that or not, I can't guarantee, because a lot of the financials around these projects are because they're so competitive in nature, especially one mine against the other. Some of the costs they don't share. However, I must say, in this particular case, it's a joint effort. So the actual mining company is investing a lot of money from not only their own R&D, but they're looking at it as a technology and a driver for change for the future. They have very large operations all over the world, and they're getting pressured by things like carbon tax and other issues on them to reduce their emissions. So to offset those penalties, they are investing themselves and putting money into it. However, going forward, we have identified that for the hydrogen economy to really kickstart in any significant level, to get the economies of scale up, you're going to have, first of all, the right policies, as my Brazilian colleague said, government policies, but then you're going to have a range of incentives. And incentives are not new. We saw it, as was mentioned in my introduction in the first session, I was involved in energy efficient lighting transitions and so on. And in all cases, as incentives were made available, once the economies of scale are there, the technologies just become so efficient and commercially available that the pricing then becomes very competitive. So I believe we got to just get the economies of scale up. But because it's still pretty much in a R&D phase, you're seeing a lot of, in South Africa specifically, a lot of donors contributing. So we're getting, donor funding from all the major donors in the world are contributing to this work. I don't want to mention their names now, but they're investing in some other countries. We've seen in some of the BRICS countries where they are putting in a lot of money, a lot of effort to try and assist, but with the view of South Africa eventually becoming a net exporter and being able to sell at competitive prices going forward. Besides this particular mining project, we have a pilot program running with, for example, one of the largest airport in South Africa. So aviation fuel using hydrogen is something that's right at the forefront, and some of the top airlines have expressed a willingness to explore this opportunity. Some of the big ones, I can mention them, Lufthansa, for example, from Germany, have already made a commitment to actually procure certain volumes using this particular process involving hydrogen. And we're doing a big pilot project. We're still busy developing, but it involves a number of private sector companies. It involves the airports company. It involves a couple of the airlines, and it looks at the whole ground fleet as well. So there you're talking about a big project, and that is like any other infrastructure project. We have got investors that want to invest in it because it makes technical sense. It also makes economic sense on that sort of scale. But it also gives them the opportunity to be early adopters in this market and to try and establish themselves in the market for future work. So we have to couple the technology with incentives, with policy, and with a bit of, let's call it a bit of psychology as well, and a bit of communications and media and awareness around this. Throw all of that into the pot, monetize them, look at the penalties like carbon taxes and other pressures to meeting our targets for decarbonisation in the Paris Accord, of which South Africa is a signatory, and you start monetizing that, then the projects become more bankable. So we believe that for this to take effect, we need to look at externalities, we need to look at subsidies, we need to look at policy, and we need to look at investors of large-scale infrastructure, of which this is one other example. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Devandan. I'm not sure if our Russian colleague has joined, so maybe we go into the next phase and then we'll have them join in. So maybe a follow-through question to Mr. Machado. Mr. Brendan Camp very nicely outlined what I thought were two different pathways to adoption. One, where there is a private-driven initiative, if I can use the term private, which is primarily a corporate-driven initiative, let's put it that way, around taking on decarbonization, being responsible in a globalized world from a competitiveness standpoint, to be an early adopter, and that leading to creation of possibly a coalition of the industry and adoption of some demand from a hydrogen standpoint. So aviation was one example there. Mining could be another. So that's in a way either moderated by the government or left to the industry to do. The other could be more around obligatory pathways, right? The government actually mandates some of the industries within the country to take on targets. And that's one of the way of transitioning existing users of hydrogen, or even newer users to actually adopt hydrogen in some form, green hydrogen in some form. So that's those are the two pathways that I kind of gleaned from what Mr. Burdenkamp outlined, which were very interesting. The third that he said was around global coalitions being necessary for capturing externalities, because we all operate in a globalized world. So if there are no coalitions around certain specific industries, and we are connected in the supply chain globally, then obvious economic disincentives get created when we adopt early. Would you take a shot at where you think these three would play out in the context of green hydrogen, particularly around BRICS economies? Because that's given the areas around the economic activities that we focus on, how do you see this playing out? Will it be the government mandated route? Will there be a lot of coalitions in the private segment? Or do you see a global coalition emerging and the BRIC economies also following through on some of the hard to abate sectors? Which ones do you see playing out, and how do we as economists plan this out in terms of choices going forward?
Well, thank you for the question. I think there is actually a match of both strategies. I don't think you need to choose one. It depends on each country's realities. How you could balance the two or the three strategies. As of today, there is no mandate for green hydrogen in Brazil. We are trying to develop it through market-oriented environment, but there are mandates for other renewables and incentives for renewables, and that together with the externalities issues brought by our colleague from South Africa, then you have a whole set of conditions to develop the market. So as we see in Brazil, we see several opportunities in different areas. For instance, Brazil is an agribusiness exporter. Then if you have like a green commodities branding, it's important. The same for metals, the same for ammonia, green steel, green minerals in general. If you are connected to the global economy, you will have to face the sustainability issue. So you will have to reduce the carbon footprint, and of course there is a whole set of instruments to internalize the carbon emissions in prices. So there is a lot of movements, strategic movements in the private sector in Brazil currently, mainly those from the hard-to-abate sectors. They are concerned about their future, how to assure a sustainability standard that keep them in business. And there are fundings and green finances and different kind of supports to help business to go through energy transition and decarbonize their own industrial process or so on. So I think that it will be a match and a balance of all those strategies. So those sectors more vulnerable to the global economy, they will have to deliver higher sustainability that otherwise they will lose competitiveness in the global economy. Those that are strictly domestic, oriented to the domestic market. As I mentioned, Brazil has a lot of a huge share of renewables in its energy matrix. So there is a lot of opportunity to decarbonize in a relatively low cost in Brazil. So if you provide the right incentives, economic incentives, in market design, you could help to faster the energy transition, and that's what we are trying to do in Brazil. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Maybe I'll come to Mr. Brendenkamp again, and then we'll take in some questions. So, to the audience, feel free to send in your questions in the Q&A, and I see some coming in. I will pose those to the panel as well. Mr. Brendenkamp, coming back to you, sir. In terms of, we spoke about demand and how demand could be created. Do you believe in some of these larger initiatives? You spoke about the Airport One. You spoke about mining. We're yet to see an initiative of that's in a collaborative manner evolve in India. Of course, we are early, but we are of course seeing action around obligations as the Honorable Additional Secretary outlined. But going back to some of these collaborative actions and possibly making it into a bigger project initiative, do you believe that bringing the entire value chain into the equation and not making it stand up as if it's a project which has to be financed on commercial grounds, so bringing possibly the OEMs also into it, select the best kind of OEMs to participate, and make the risk spread around for everyone, right? And learn from the experience is one way of looking at it. And you spoke about developmental finance, which could be made available to these projects. It would possibly be more feasible if you have participation from the entire supply chain in that. And we see that evolving, for instance, in the North H2 project in Europe. Is that something that you see possibly being adopted as a lead into some of the industries, maybe looking at creating scale, but de-risking it by spreading the risk amongst everyone, so everyone comes in and shares equally in that kind of a risk structure, so that it, with some banking, with some developmental finance, it starts to make sense even today. And then with improved scale, as you spoke about, economies picking up, scale economy picking up, it shows the day for adoption in the future. Does that sound like something which could work?
Yes, definitely. I think that's the model that we are following because South Africa is in a developmental phase. We're seeing a lot of interest from international OEMs in South Africa, already setting up shop, already bringing in finance and developmental finance into some of the projects. One of the other projects I just can mention, because my Russian colleague in the previous session mentioned about a hydrogen-operated train. One of our larger municipalities in South Africa, the city of Cape Town, are busy looking at rail transport using hydrogen. They have a huge problem, which we have in, I'm sure, most of our developing countries, is because we have a limited capacity of electricity, but we also have a huge problem when it comes to vandalism of the networks, the theft of the cables for the electric trains. The diesel-operated trains are just too expensive to run. So they've got a fairly good plan together at looking at a hydrogen fuel cell operated train, not specifically for the motion of the train, and that is quite an advantage. And they're bringing in ratepayer funding as well as developmental financing or funding from an international organization. But the OEMs definitely they see this as a huge market. They see this, and in our experience, they are coming to the party and prepared to share in the risk and the reward at this stage, so to reduce their returns in this initial phase until it's ramped up, because they seem to have a vision of the longer term. They're seeing the signals all over the world that we will be moving towards an hydrogen economy. We have to do that. There's no turning back now if we want to achieve our global as well as our individual local targets. So yes, collaboration definitely, and I think between BRICS countries we need to ramp that up. We have a facility known as the BRICS Bank, which is there to specifically fund infrastructure projects. You know, how good would that be if we could get a BRICS Bank funded hydrogen project, albeit on a small scale, but replicated in all the BRICS countries, you know, where that is just a small section of rail in each of our countries, funded as a project by the BRICS Bank, and then bringing in the OEMs and all the other components. You know, that would really set the scene, and it could create a blueprint for a future funding mechanism to increase the scale. So that would be my vision going forward, that we maybe put our heads together, put a proposal together to the BRICS Bank, but something that's replicable, that can be used in all the countries, and then escalated post this initial phase. So yes, we have to work together on this, and we have to bring in the whole value chain. Trying to do this on your own, trying to just do it with government funding or RD&I, you're going to do a very limited amount of work. You're going to fall way behind the development. So yeah, I think mixed match funding, that's the way to go going forward.
Excellent. There's some great ideas there. I think food for thought for everyone around. So yes, let me switch tracks and pick up some questions from the audience. There are a few Q&A questions, live questions, which have come in. One of them is around, I think, a doubt around Mr. Burdenkamp. If you are able to throw some light, it's fine. But if not, I think this is more technical. But around how feasible it is, you spoke about use of hydrogen in a aviation context. So what's the thought process there? Is the question. More in terms of is that a blending option? Is that a complete transition? How is that being looked at from an aviation fuel perspective? Is if you have some insights, then it's fine. Otherwise, we can obviously take that up offline.
Sure. I can share with what is publicly available, and that is definitely a blending option that is involving an international financier, an investor, the airline themselves. There is some South African money, RD&I money, also being thrown into the equation for this particular project as an initial pilot project. So it is a blended solution, playing the actual parties involved and the beneficiaries, playing the cards a bit close to chest now because, you know, the airline and aviation industry globally is in dire straits. They're looking for anything that can cut down their costs. In the fact that their routes are reduced and the actual travel time is reduced. So, you know, anyone who can be at the forefront of the development and show the actual savings would have a competitive advantage. And then hence, not too much information is available around it, but we can definitely get whatever is, you know, they're prepared to share and share that with the group. But it is a blended financing option.
Maybe, Mr. Machado, I can go to you next around. Do you? I think you must have mentioned this in the earlier session, and I missed out. But there is a question on this around: is a roadmap for hydrogen existing in the country? Is there something that's integrated into the future? You know, energy question. Are there some choices which have been activated in Brazil, or you know, it's to be done? It's still out there.
Okay. Thank you for the question. As I mentioned in the previous panel, the hydrogen policy in Brazil has like 20 years, but it was concentrated on R&D and innovation, and now we are getting a new phases, a new step forward, and we are elaborating the proposal of directives to the National Energy Policy Council of Brazil regarding a national hydrogen program. So in this way, we will try to provide a more comprehensive structure. So the hydrogen market could be developed in a faster way. Also, I forgot to mention in my last answer, it's also important to make clear that Brazil has a national development bank, and there is a lot of financial support for renewables. And currently, there are some specific products for hydrogen, and particularly low and green, low carbon and green hydrogen.
Right. Okay. Mr. Bergenkamp, if I can come to you, there is a question around incentives, but I thought I'll tweak that a little. And you spoke about the participation of OEMs also. Do you see incentives also extending to the manufacturing side, given that there is a competitive advantage in getting manufacturing indigenized within the countries, and hydrogen really doesn't have a global supply chain from a material standpoint that we know of, not as acute as, let's say, storage, battery storage, that is. So do you see incentives being tailor-made for manufacturing to be indigenized and scaled up within the country? Would you see incentives being tailor-made for that as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do, you know, we've seen an overall decline in the manufacturing capability in South Africa, and that's contributed to the high unemployment rate. So there's a big drive by the government to reinvest in manufacturing, and it's linked to the fourth industrial revolution, looking at smart applications for manufacturing and providing investments, providing incentives into the manufacturing. So we have a specific tax incentive that has been going and has seen really good results over the last couple of years, which we refer to as the Section 12I tax incentives. It's specifically for investments into manufacturing technology and manufacturing facilities in South Africa. Going back to hydrogen specifically, so we have our first, you can refer to it as a small, medium, and micro woman-owned factory in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, producing fuel cells. So the government has invested, I can't disclose the amount of money, but a significant amount of money in that facility in one of the industrial development zones. The company is called Bambili, Bambili. As a SMME, Black woman-owned company, producing fuel cells in South Africa. So over and above the investment that the government has made into this facility as the first of hopefully will be a number going into the future, we have also placed the first order of 50 fuel cells to actually get the process up and running. Place the first order. Getting an order of 50 fuel cells is significant. It's enabling them to bring people into the facility to help and manufacture. Through the rollout of those products which have now been procured by government and paid for by government, they'll be able to reinvest into further manufacturing capability. So yes, a sort of green shoots funding to get the manufacturing facility and process up and running has happened in one plant, in one manufacturing facility, but depending on the longer term results from this, we could see this springing up all over in we have different what we call industrial development zones around the country in all the provinces to try and encourage manufacturing. So this one is in a particular province, and we could see that being replicated in, we have 9 provinces in South Africa. We could possibly see that in the other 8 provinces. Subject to the availability of funding, all governments are in a bit of a tight spot now as a result of the COVID situation. But we do believe that the model has been created now with this first manufacturing facility, and if the results are there, there's absolutely no reason why this cannot be replicated in at least the other 8 provinces.
Thank you so much. That's pretty insightful. And thanks for all the suggestions and insights there. I think, one of the things that I take away from this session is possibly work collaboratively amongst the BRIC countries on areas which overlap, for instance, rail transportation, where we could collectively work in creating scale and a project which is jointly funded and looked at from a pilot perspective. So that sounds really exciting. And of course, there's a lot to learn from our individual initiatives in various sectors that we are kind of taking across the various countries. So thank you very much. This was an interesting discussion. I hope it is interesting for everyone around. For me, I took away a lot. So thank you. I'll hand over now to Kanashri to bring it to a close. Thank you very much, Mr. Machado, Mr. President.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you
so
for the
much.
opportunity.
Thank you so much to the panelists and to the moderator. Mr. Patnaik, you have been brilliant. Thank you so much for seamlessly steering the conversation ahead. And with this, the 2-day-long online summit on green hydrogen comes to its last leg. The past 2 days were filled with extremely important, thought-provoking, and meaningful discussions. It was heartening to hear from each of the BRICS country representatives and learn about the solidarity towards adopting green hydrogen. I now invite Mr. Suman Chatterjee, Director, Ministry of Power, Government of India, to present the closing remarks and extend a vote of thanks. Mr. Chatterjee has been engaged in promoting bilateral cooperation with global countries and International Energy Agency for initiatives in the power sector. He has been actively involved in bilateral and multilateral funding of power projects, including their appraisal, climate change initiatives. He has represented the Ministry of Power in COP negotiations. Additionally, he has also undertaken the responsibilities of the vigilance machineries within Ministry of Power and PSUs. He has steered various policy initiatives related to Indian Railways and has also handled the establishment of the cadre of Ayush, positioning it as a household name in the global scenario. Chatterjee, sir.
Thank you, Kanashri. First of all, thank you for those eloquent introduction. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all the delegates of the BRICS countries and my colleagues from NTPC for organizing, participating, and making valuable contributions over the last 2 days. Thanks are also due to the panelists who have served this occasion so well. The BRICS has always been an essential platform for the partner countries to strengthen collaboration and safeguard common interests. Energy cooperation is an indispensable point in agenda of the BRICS countries, and the only way forward is to keep strengthening our valuable partnership for mutual benefits. Strengthening energy cooperation and seeking ways to build strategic partnership towards energy development will not only help to jointly fight against external risks and climate change, but also have a positive impact on the global energy transition and sustainable development. As we have all been informed during the course of the seminar, BRICS countries together supply energy to almost 40% of the world population, and so whatever we accomplish here will have significant effect on the future energy trends. Green hydrogen presents a good technology option for BRICS countries, individually and collectively, to address these challenges and benefit from the opportunities. BRICS countries have taken cognizance of this vast canvas presented by the hydrogen arena, and the exhaustive deliberations during the course of this seminar is a testimony to the interest and collective collaborative approach to the fast emerging field. We already have the existing platform of the BRICS Energy Research Cooperation Platform, ERCP, which has done some very good work, in fact, introductory kind of work in the sector of energy efficiency. As we know, this has been established to facilitate the development of efficient and sustainable energy systems, to promote the dissemination of advanced energy technologies, cooperation on capacity building, as well as exchange of statistical data, and plans on the development of national energy systems, and information on best practices and regulatory frameworks in the energy sector. The last month, we had a very extensive deliberations on this ERCP regime. And in the coming 1 or 2 months during these BRICS engagements, we hope to get into further advancements on the individual sectors. Now, coming to hydrogen, which indeed presents a huge opportunity to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors such as heavy industries and long-haul transport. The cost is, of course, of a challenge at this juncture, but I'm sure with the efforts which the whole the world community is engaged at the moment, we should see some light of the day and look forward to some interesting developments. The problem at the moment is the intermittent nature of renewable energy. So battery storage is an option, but it takes a lot of space, and thus it has its limitations. It is here that hydrogen provides us the much needed opportunity to break the inherent barriers of storing and transporting the intermittent renewable energy across the world, which could result in the true shift from thermal to renewable power. But to get there, we have to work hard indeed. Technologies have to be brought to scale. Costs of electrolyzers, compressors, storage systems, and fuel cells have to be brought down. Continuous low RE-based power has to be made available. The entire hydrogen value chain and infrastructure needs to be developed. New specifications and safety standards have to be developed across the entire value chain. The government and industry must now work together to ensure existing regulations are not an unnecessary barrier to investment. Trade will benefit from common international standards for the safety of transporting and storing large volumes of hydrogen and having appropriate certificate of origin. In order to accelerate the green hydrogen economy, the entire value chain needs to be developed. Since there are many applications for green hydrogen, as BRICS countries, we must strategize on prioritizing applications, look at low-hanging fruits first. Prioritizing green hydrogen applications in countries' energy policy framework, therefore, is of utmost importance. As BRICS nations, we are fortunate to pursue developmental goals at a time when the low carbon technologies like wind and solar have already become affordable, and possibilities with hydrogen is clearly visible. The deliberations that took place at length over the last 2 days have surely provided us a better shared understanding of the hydrogen landscape from the BRICS perspective, and going forward could result in tangible outcomes for all of us. I once again thank you all for your active and valuable contribution to this seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for doing the honor, sir. Well, the two-day summit thus comes to a wrap. We leave you with thoughts to develop upon, ambition and plans to be turned to reality, and collaborations that may lead the world to becoming a better and more sustainable place. We look forward to more fruitful associations in future together, wishing you brighter days ahead. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Greetings to everyone around the world. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. It was a pleasure to meet you all. Hope to see you.
Thank you for this great event. Thank you. Bye-bye.